Michael is the CEO of workaholicsforhire.com, an outsourcing and customer support services company. So he'll do your customer support for you. If you have a company that has some volume that you don't want to do it yourself, Michael and his crew are experts at it and will professionally do it for you. Michael is a direct response copywriter and marketing consultant for close to 30 years, online since 1992 actually. He's the author of several books, one of which distributed over 300,000 copies. So if you want to learn how to sell books, have your questions ready because, over 300,000 copies, that's exceptional. He was instrumental in selling over $100 million worth of products and services for a wide variety of clients, stretching hundreds of different and unrelated industries. Dubbed as the Roger Bannister of Online Copy, his most notable success is a sales letter, get this, that sold over $1 million online in its first day. One day, I think it was 18 hours actually, it sold $1 million in sales, and he wrote that sales letter. First of its kind, and a feat repeated many times since then by him and many others, which is why they call him the Roger Bannister. He was the guy that broke I think it was a 5-minute mile. So we're going to come on with Michael. Welcome, Michael. Great to have you on.
Thanks, Ron.
Right, today.
Now, here's a question for you. Are we going to? Am I going to be the one changing the slides, or are you going to just change the slides when I say to?
Yeah, I have it there. I could change it when you say to, or when we finish with the interview question. So,
all right.
So today,
focus on the
tried and true copywriting technique. Tried and true copywriting techniques to sell more books and products. So, first question, why is copywriting important?
And maybe also explain a little. I think, a lot of people here will know it, but maybe just so in case it's unclear to some people what it actually is.
Yes, it's right. So I'm going to go back a little bit and just talk about what copywriting is, like Alice just asked, and then we'll just dive into why is that important. Now, a lot of people don't understand. By the way, welcome, folks, and thank you for having me on this summit, and I hope you guys learned a lot from this presentation. Copywriting essentially is, and a lot of people, when they say copyright, meaning R-I-G-H-T, they think they're owning the rights to the copy. We're talking about writing, meaning creating the copy in the first place. And essentially what copywriting is it's just writing. But copy is a slang term that comes out of the newspaper industry that means the copy that people write in order to go into an ad. So anything that is ad-driven or commercial-driven is usually ad copy. And it's also used in regular newspaper parlance because we have copy editors who actually define what headlines to choose from articles that are being published in the newspaper. But that became such a very well-known term. It's so commonly used now to talk about ad or marketing-related content, marketing copy. So when we talk about writing copy or copywriting, we're talking about creating words on paper that help to persuade people, and that's what copywriting is. Now, when a lot of people say, why is copywriting, why should I learn copywriting? Even people who probably don't even write copy should understand copy, and here's why. The first thing that I want to impart to you is this. A lot of people make the mistake that they think that they are their own audiences. And that's the biggest mistake you can do because a lot of people don't understand or don't see it or don't read their copy from the perspective of their audience. Copywriting is important because it's a process that goes through what we call in marketing parlance the sender who encodes a message in a way that hopefully will get decoded by the recipient in the same way or the way that it was intended to. The problem is a lot of times when people write copy, we're so married with our own product, we're so married to our own books if we're writing books, we're so married to what it means to us that we don't really think about how that message, when we encode that, meaning what words we choose to put on paper or what words we choose to put on in a video or in any kind of sales presentation, will be then decoded by the recipient in hopefully the way that we want them to. Oftentimes we don't think about that. We don't think about the recipient so much. We think about how we want to best say, because we're so excited about a product. That's great. We want to be passionate about our message. But very often we choose the wrong message, or we choose a message that we know we can understand, but very often we don't. I mean, look at this presentation just now. Alice just said, why don't we describe what copywriting is before we jump into it? Because that's important, because a lot of people don't know what that means. And that's the thing about copywriting and why it is so important, because we need to understand our audience more, we need to encode a message or take a message or choose the words that will convey that message in the way that we want our audience to understand it. We don't want just them to read it. We also want them to understand it, but at the same time, we want them to be persuaded by that. We want them to take action, some kind of action. And that's what writing is and why it is so important. So, next slide. So, what is the single biggest step in writing copy that converts? I sort of implied that, but let me just go back and describe what copywriting means. When we try to get our audiences to take action or to be persuaded by an idea, it could be an idea, it could be to take action on a product, on a purchase of a product or a service. We want to choose the words that mean something to them. Do we guess? Do we think we know our audiences? And that's the key, or the biggest error that people make, is that we tend to think, or we tend to assume what our audiences want, or how they think, or what they do, or what makes them tick, what keeps them up at night, and we don't. So the single biggest step in writing copy that converts, and I can tell you this from being in copywriting for almost 30 years now, it has nothing to do with the headline, or, I mean, those elements are important, but they come after this. They're like, it's a domino effect. It's not the headline, it's not the offer, it's not the bullet points, it's not the price. All those things, yes, are important, but they come after this single biggest thing, which is market. Your market is your single biggest determinant of how well your copy will do. And in order to write for your market, you need to know, you need to understand, you need to research your market. So what is that step? It's called market research. And here's the key, and a little tip. A lot of people, when they write copy, they tend to get writer's block. They say, oh, I don't know what to write about. I don't know what to put into paper. I don't know what to put on my computer screen. I don't know what to type out. And what I say is this, is that if you do have writer's block, the problem is not that you don't know, it's that you don't know enough about your market. Because if you go back and do more market research, find more stuff about your market, who they are, what do they do, what kind of work do they do, what keeps them up at night, what problems are they mostly preoccupied by, what gives them the greatest pleasure, what type of families do they have, is family important to them in the first place. All those things, you need to know more about your market, because you know what, once you do, writing copy will flow so easily from that point on. It's like an ebb and flow of a nice beach. It comes out, it just flows out, because then you'll have something that will come out and pop out at you. And sometimes it won't necessarily start right away, but because you have a lot of knowledge of your market, you can start talking a little bit about your market, or start talking about yourself as the author of the copy or the author of the product or service, in a way that your market, you know that your market will understand, because there's a certain affinity. You know, people like people who are like them. So then you start doing that, and all of a sudden, oh, I want to talk about this point, because this point is going to be important to them, because it matches some of the benefits of my product or service, or in this case, my book that I'm writing, that'll get them to tick, that'll get them to want to buy my product and read about it. So the more market research you do, the less writer's block you'll have, but also the more ideas you'll have to write about. And you know what? When people say, well, what kind of headlines should I choose? What kind of offer should I make? What kind of benefits should I talk about? Should I talk about all the benefits of my product? You know what? If you know a lot about your market and you do good market research, those questions will automatically be answered. After I write copy, or after I do market research and when I write copy, headlines come out, kind of like pop out at me. Offers pop out at me. The stories that will then connect with my audience. We call it story selling rather than storytelling, because we're basically telling a story that gets people to be persuaded through the power of the story rather than direct high pressure sales. Because people are more convinced by, they're more persuaded by, they're more moved by stories, and they're especially stories that makes them understand that you understand them and the product or service that you offer is perfect for them. So, next slide.
Exactly. And that also applies to anything you're writing, whether you're writing a title for your book, a subtitle for your book, a description for your book, whether you're writing blog posts, whether you're anything, you use the same type of persuasion and copywriting skills for those things as well.
Everything. Yeah, absolutely right, Ron. Because every time you're going to write anything about your book, whether it's even the cover, the back cover, or even about you as the author, the about the author section. Sometimes people get stuck on that because they think it's, oh, I don't want to be, I don't want to talk too much about myself. Well, guess what? You'll choose the right kind of description of yourself so that your audience will understand more about what you have to offer. So, what's the number one thing that we need to know about our audience before writing copy? So now that we do a lot of market research, you're probably wondering, well, what is the key thing? What is that one thing that will be important in my market research that will help me write good copy? Now, I want to make sure that I want to give credit where credit is due. I didn't create this. This came about from something that I've written, that I read a long time ago by Eugene Schwartz in a book called Breakthrough Advertising, and it's a book that I highly, highly recommend. And he talks about the levels of sophistication of your audience, the levels of sophistication of your audience. And what it means is how sophisticated is your market about your product? Do they know what your product is, and do you know exactly what it does it do, and so on and so forth. I sort of Fortinized it, for the lack of a better word. And the reason why is because I prefer to look at it as from the problem standpoint. And by that I mean people might be sophisticated about your product, but if they don't even understand what their problem is, that you have to sort of go back and do more, I call it more educational copy. And that means that they're probably not fully aware of the problem that they're suffering that your particular product or service, or in this case book, might help to solve. So that is what you need to know, is what stage of awareness is your market, meaning how aware are they of A, the problem, B, your solution, and C, how it matches together. Which will come to this next slide and explains a lot so that you guys have a little bit of an idea or a little bit of a mnemonic. So the next slide is the oath formula. What exactly is the oath formula? And it's sort of a mnemonic that I created that helps you guys understand the level of awareness, the stage of awareness that your market is at. That will help you. That will be the biggest determinant of how you write your copy and even how long. You know, a lot of people say, how long should my copy be? Well, it depends how aware your market is. Oath is sort of a mnemonic that also kind of, if you want to, when you write copy, think of this: how prepared is your audience to take an oath? You know, and it means this: oblivious, apathetic, thinking, and hurting. Now, what does that mean? So oblivious basically means that they are oblivious about the problem. They don't even know that they have the problem. And that means that when you write copy for an oblivious market, and hopefully you don't, but it does exist. A good example of that is prearranged funeral services or life insurance sometimes. Sometimes we don't even know how we need that product until somebody close to us has passed away. That's what, when we say oblivious, that's the type of market we're actually going after. And in that case, we need to sort of educate them more about the problem before we even start to educate them on what kind of solutions we have and then what solution you have that will help solve that problem. Because you don't even know the problem, you're basically you're running yourself into a brick wall. A lot of people will write copy. Sometimes the copy that doesn't sell, they wonder why it's not selling, and very often it's because their copy is not at the proper level of awareness. It's not educating your audience enough, depending on what stage of awareness they're at. The A, which is apathetic, means that they are aware of the problem, but they just don't care. So a lot of people might have a problem, and it's not really a problem to them. It's probably a problem, or it's something that's, it's not as important. They don't really care about it. So what your job has to do at this point is, you don't have to necessarily educate them about the problem. They know about it. But now you sort of have to take them a step up more. You may have to talk about why it's important to solve that problem. Make it a bit more real, more concrete, more visible in their minds. Talk about, visualize the problem in their minds, or what can happen if they don't solve the problem. Things can go from bad to worse, and that's where your copy has to press some buttons here. That's where you talk about more about why it is important to have this problem solved. So you're turning the apathetic into in the higher level, which is now the T. So they're thinking about it. Now they have a problem. They know that the problem is important. They need to solve it. So now they're thinking about a solution. So they're shopping around. They're thinking about different solutions. They're probably even thinking about different alternatives, not necessarily competing solutions. It could be, if I want to go from, I'm in Ottawa, Canada, and I want to go to Montreal, I can take the bus, I can take the train, I can take an airplane. Those are modes of transportation. They're not two different airlines competing for each other. It's two different modes of transportation. So people might want to solve their problems with a solution that's not necessarily directly competing with you. It might be indirectly competing with you. So that's where you have to talk more about your solution, why your solution is more important than any other, not only solution out there that's competing with you, but indirect solutions. So that's the thinking audience. And oftentimes that might be just extra benefits or something unique about your solution that you can talk about that will get them to want to buy your product more, or your book in this case. But then the final step of the oath formula is hurting. This is the lowest hanging fruit. If all of our audiences for all the products and services in the world were hurting for those solutions, we would be all millionaires. And we know that that's not true, but that would be the lowest hanging fruit. And very often there are some products out there that fit that particular category. Some people are hurting and they need the solution, they need it now. So now your job is more about the offer. What can get people to buy now? It's not about buying your specific product compared to all the other products. They want your product. But if they're hemming and hawing for some reason, it's because of your offer. It's because of something that's not urgent enough in their minds, or it's not something that helps them to sort of cross over that line, so to speak, from a browser to an actual client. It might be an extra little bonus. It might be an extra a question in their minds that has not been answered yet. It could be an extra risk reversal, some kind of guarantee, whatever. Those are things that we want to look at in order to get that hurting audience to buy a product. And very often, copy for people who are hurting will be far smaller, far shorter, far less than people who are in need of more education. That's not necessarily true in all cases, but it's true in a great majority of cases. The more oblivious your market is, the longer the copy will be. The more hurting your audience is, the shorter the copy will be. If they're really hurting that much, sometimes just a small piece of copy with a buy now button is all you need, Yeah. But that's the thing, is that a lot of people, especially if you're selling books and you're selling books to an audience and you're an unknown author, and people might not necessarily fully understand the benefits of your product, you might have to have long copy to sell your book. But that will also be determined by the market research that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Ron, you seem like you were going to say something.
On top of that, people who are hurting in that state of mind are repeat buyers. They're multiple buyers. They'll keep buying stuff until their problem goes away. Like how many people out there are desperate to make money online and just buy one thing after the next and try different things? How many people here have only bought one ebook or one book, on a topic that they're interested in? No, you're going to buy multiple courses, multiple books, multiple products until, you figure things out.
Exactly. So the next slide, we're going to talk about, to get the biggest return on investment, what copy elements do we need to focus on? So when people say, what exactly should I focus on my copy more than anything else? I'm going to refer back to something Dan Kennedy once said, and it's true in a lot of copy, is that readership falls off when people land on your copy, land on your website, or start watching your video. The readership or the viewership will fall off dramatically in the first few paragraphs, the first few words, or even in the case of a video, the first few seconds. But then it doesn't until almost the very end. What does that mean to you? It means that the beginning is the most important part of your copy. And very often that means the headline. In an email, it could be the subject line. In a video, it could be the introduction, the very first few seconds of a video. It really has to grab their attention. There's a very famous formula in copywriting, and this is not my formula, this is something that is being taught in marketing circles, and it's used in newspaper industry. It's called AIDA. A-I-D-A. Attention, interest, desire, and action. So you got to get people's attention. Your copy has to get people's attention, and that's very often done with the headline. But it doesn't have to be the headline. It could be a picture at the top. It could be some kind of eye grabber, some kind of eye gravity elements that will actually get people to it pulls them into the copy for whatever reason. It could be some kind of interactive device. It could be something that they have to click on, whatever the case is. But very often it's the headline. And interest means, well, you've got to get them interested, and then after that, increase their desire in whatever they're interested in, and then third and finally, you got to get them to take action, to buy, or to be persuaded by, to buy your product or service, or to be persuaded by your book, and so on and so forth. So, and here's my point, is in all my years of copywriting, I found out that the middle part of your copy, okay, look at it, the AIDA formula, the A and the first A and the last A, attention and action. Those are the two elements that will get you the biggest return, the biggest bang for your buck, the biggest return on investment. The better the headline, the greater the readership, the viewership, and then at the end, whatever you do to make them take action, that means your offer, the call to action section, your offer, whatever at the end that gets them to buy. And even the ordering process, sometimes, you know, people don't understand there's speed bumps in the process of buying your product. Sometimes they have to wait forever, or their ordering process is so convoluted they abandon their shopping carts. So the headline and the, so look at it this way, the attention factor and the action factor, the two A's at the formula, are the two elements that you need to focus on the most. Do you need to focus on the rest? Of course you do. I'm not saying to dump all the rest, but the rest is relatively extraneous to those two elements. Yes, you need to know how to tell a good story. Yes, you need to know how to write proper bullets. Bullets is list of benefits, features, and benefits of your product or service. You need to have some good testimonials. All those things that you put in copy, or that you've seen in copy, you need to focus on. But what you need to focus on the most and first are those two A's. Attention and action, headlines and offers. So, next slide. When we talk about headlines, people will ask, well, do you have any tips for writing good headlines? Here's what I'm going to recommend. Now, there's so many different ways to write headlines, and the only real way to make sure that a headline works is to test it. But sometimes we don't have that luxury, or sometimes we're just launching, we're trying to find a good headline for a product or service right away. I have a very simple rule. It's called the 3x3 rule. A 3x3 rule means this. Focus on, and they're in order of lesser to more important. So the lesser, and it's not that they're not important, they're all important. But here's what I mean. The first three, this is a 3x3. So the first of the three is the 3 greatest human goals. That means that every human being on this planet have one of these 3 goals. They either want to save or make time, effort, money. Time, effort, money. So make or save, time, effort, or money. So if your headline can do that, can speak to your audience in a way that gets them to understand in an instant that they can save or make time, effort, or money, they'll dive into your copy more. They'll be more, they want to know more about what you can do to do those 3 things. So those are the 3 greatest human goals. The second, and probably a little bit better, a little bit more important, is the 3 greatest human desires. What are the 3 greatest human desires? Now, of course, there's so many. There are more than 3, of course. We're human beings after all. But what I have found in copy, these are the 3 biggest hot buttons that people can push. They're called lust, greed, and comfort. So almost the same thing as time, effort, and money, but basically what we're talking about is lust. When we talk about lust, we don't necessarily just talk about sex. It could be about a lust for life. Weight loss is part of that. Feeling good about yourself. New Year's resolutions, things like that. Health is related to that. So lust, greed, and greed, of course, we know greed is not just about money, but it could be prestige of ownership. It could be how to increase one's status, and so on and so forth. And then finally, comfort is what can help make us more comfortable. Convenience. How can we do things easier? Maybe it is something that they're currently doing that your product will help have them do it easier, faster, more enjoyably, less painful, whatever the case is. So less greed and comfort. And the final 3 of the 3x3 rule, and this is my favorite one because this is the one that gets you the biggest return on investment for headlines, is the 3 greatest human teasers. And they are curiosity, scarcity, and controversy. We are all curious. We all want to know people have an intrinsic need for closure. You know, there's a very famous headline for copy that says, "Do you make these mistakes in English?" And that was the headline, and it was for an English course that was probably one of the biggest selling English courses of all time. And this was many, many, many years ago in a newspaper ad, but it still is one of the best ones because people want to know what mistakes. What are these mistakes? Or when you say, for example, I couldn't believe my eyes when she did this, ... Or do you have these symptoms, or whatever. So basically what I'm saying is this, is that you use a little bit of curiosity. Get people to open up an idea that people need, they have this intrinsic need to close it. It's called the nested loop. It's like people want to find the end of whatever they're starting with the headline. And hopefully the end is really about your product or service or your book that you're selling at the end. But that's called curiosity. The second one is scarcity, and that's basically using an element of urgency, an element that gets people to know that there's not much left. Maybe a deadline, maybe a limited quantity, maybe time-sensitive offer, maybe a quantity-bound number of subscription, whatever the case is. Or even scarcity in a general sense, or scarcity like, for example, you're selling right now, Valentine's is coming up very soon, so right now is the time to order your Valentine's gifts, you know, and then maybe make sure that people know that time's a-ticking. So that's what scarcity means. And when people read a headline about that, they will get more, they will have a greater desire to read your copy because it's made scarce. You know, people don't know how much they want something until it's about to be taken away from them, right? So scarcity will increase that desire. Now finally, controversy, intrigue, something maybe shocking, something that gets people riled up, maybe something that gets people to want to know more in your copy, they want to read the copy because it shook them when they've read the headline. Very, very often, and this is kind of funny because if you are on Facebook or any kind of social media, you'll notice that this is often used, and often they call it clickbait. And people say, well, clickbait is bad. Well, for articles of general nature, maybe. But when it comes to sales copy, clickbait is phenomenal. As long as you make sure that your sales copy is consistent and congruent with the clickbait or whatever you use in your headline. Don't choose a headline. What's that?
I'm just saying, amen. Yes, it's got to match. You can't just trick people. And
well, of course.
It's a very good point because you see that a lot where it's a trick, right?
Right, because that's when people read a headline that's very interesting and it gets them to click, and then they find out more about what that headline started. They will never say, "Oh, it's clickbait." They only say when it's clickbait because they feel they've been wrong. They feel like they've been, you know, it's bait and switch kind of idea. You don't want to do that. You probably, you know, a lot of people in the audience might know this. There's a very famous ad that said "sex" as a headline, and then after that it says, "Now that I have your attention, here's my offer." You know, and you don't want to do that. I mean, it kind of probably works a little bit, but people will not buy from you again and again. It'll leave a bit of a bad taste in your mouth in a sense because they don't want to be used like that again in the future. They think, well, if he did that with his headline in his article, what is he going to do with his or her product? So be consistent. You have to be consistent and congruent with the headline, with the message in your ad. So you can be you can use some polarized idea, or you can use a little bit more of the curiosity element as well. But intrigue does work. Intrigue and shock and controversy. Something like a lot of people will use headlines that have a news topic related item to it that's currently in the news, whatever the case is. Now that might not work all the time, especially if something is hot right now as a hot topic. It might not necessarily be like that all the time, but it might be something you want to ride the coattails on. You want to take advantage of something that's very at the top of people's minds, top of mind awareness, that will cause them to want to know more about your copy. So 3 by 3, just to recap, 3 greatest human goals, 3 greatest human desires, and the 3 greatest human teasers. And just to quickly refresh you, 3 greatest human goals is to make or save time, effort, money. The 3 greatest human desires is lust, greed, and comfort. And then finally, the 3 greatest human teasers, which is curiosity, scarcity, and controversy. All right, next slide. So remember we talked about the A at the beginning and the A at the end. So we talked about the A at the beginning, which is headlines is mostly used, but the A at the end is the offer, or the call to action section. Now a lot of people say, well, what can I do to make an offer that converts? And this is some of the hardest questions for me to answer, because, I mean, a lot of people will say, how do I make my offer more compelling? I don't know. What exactly do you offer? And there's no real way to say a definite way to make an offer more compelling. But if I can give you, and plus I don't know what you can add to your offer. I mean, of course, there are different ways to make an offer more compelling. Either reduce the risk even more, making like sometimes we use a 30-day guarantee, we'll double it to a 60-day guarantee, maybe sometimes a year guarantee or a double guarantee, like guarantee that you get the best out of this. If not, I'll not only give you your money back, but I'll double your money back, whatever the case is, whatever. I mean, we can do, there's so many things that we can add to an offer. We can add bonuses. We can add multiple bonuses. I want to come back to a very essential element, and it's this. Think of this. Value, expectation. As long as your offers, the value that people get, meet or exceeds their expectations, your offer, it has a higher chance to convert and convert well. And here's why, and that's so important, is a lot of people say it's about the price. Should I test pricing? When I test my offer, should I test prices? You know what? First of all, price has nothing to do with whether people buy or not. I mean, why would somebody turn down an offer for, I don't know, $12 on something, and then just a few minutes later they'll buy something for $40? It's not about price or price alone. It has to do with what's the value. So you need to either increase the value or lower their expectations. And that's where that offer part comes in, where you add more to make sure that the value surpasses their expectations. However, and this is what I mean by lower expectations, but there's a limit. Because a lot of people say, well, what if I add tons and tons and tons and tons of bonuses? Well, guess what? You've just now manipulated people's expectations, because people will think that something's wrong here, that this must be something wrong. And all people say, oh, I should have, I have this $17 product with over $500,000 worth of bonuses. And people will automatically, their expectation will be, well, of course this is crap. There's something hidden here, or there's something not right here. So there's a fine line. There's a point of diminishing returns. You have to make sure that your value will always exceed your expectations, but don't go too far so that now expectations will be changed because of that. So when you look at your offer, look at it this way. If I read your copy and I read about the extreme amount of value, and plus sometimes a lot of people will say, do I add anything to my offer to increase the value? Sometimes it has nothing to do with what your offer you put in your offer. Sometimes it has to do with increasing the value in the minds of your prospect about your offer. And sometimes that's describing why it's so valuable. Sometimes you can talk about how much time and effort and money that they save or make with your product. And sometimes you can find little things that they might even not think about, what we call in marketing on-sought benefits. And sometimes you bring that to the top of their minds, that increases the value, so that when they come to the offer, then it's like, wow, this is it's an easy decision to make. I'm going to buy this product or service right away. So just to come back to what I'm saying, when you look at your offer, there's so many things that you can do to your offer. You can, talk about the price. You can talk about adding bonuses. You can talk about more risk reversal. You can talk about social proof, testimonials, things that you can add to your offer to make people feel there's more value. But very often, it's all about how it meets or exceeds their expectations. What are their expectations? And coming back to the very beginning of our presentation today, when I talked about market research, that is why it is so important to know the O formula and where your market is at. Know and understand their level of expectation coming into the game. Once you know that, then you can sort of work with those expectations and either work by changing those expectations or increasing the values that it surpasses those expectations, so that when it comes to the offer, it's an easy sale. And they don't feel pressured in buying your product or service, because I'm not a big fan of hard pressure sales, and I understand that some people do, and that's perfectly fine. But I think that if people truly understand and know the value, the true value of your offer, and if it exceeds their expectations, it's going to be an easy sell. It's going to be an easy conversion right there. All right, so let's go to the next one. Now, we talked a bit about what we should focus on first. A lot of people say we look at the attention factor and the action factor. Are these the same kinds of things that we need to focus on when we test? And I would say yes, but look at the entire formula. So here's my point. And I'm going to I'm going to do a bit of a revelation here, so that people, a confession actually, so that you'll understand what I'm saying by this. When I started to do copy testing, when I started to test my copy, very often I would have tested in the beginning a lot of different tiny elements, and it's okay. I mean, it's important to test colors, sometimes digits and prices, like $17.77 versus $17.95 or 82 cents or whatever the case is. And I understand that those will actually do have some increases. But what I have found in especially in the last 10 years, that the greatest conversion boosts in copy have nothing to do with the, okay, let me back up. There's two things that's important in copy: what you say and how you say it. So what you say is the main core message, the main story, the main idea, the big idea, so to speak. The element that gets to connect with people at an intimate level. And then the how to say it, which is not only the words you choose, but the colors, the background, the pictures that you add, the icons, all those things, which are fantastic. And you can test those. But I have found that focusing on the what more will give you the greatest boosts in conversion, and to test wildly different variables. Not just things that are slightly different from one another, because that will give you some slight boosts. But if you want to see boosts, like if let's say your copy is converting right now at, let's say, 1.5, and you change the color or something, it boosts it to 1.7, that's a great boost, especially when you talk about bottom of the road money. But I have found that if you test something completely different, and especially on the what you say rather than the how you say it, maybe different message, maybe a different story, maybe even a different offer, you'll find out that that 1.5 can boost to 3, 4, even 5%. So you've tripled and quadrupled your conversion rate because of that huge boost. So coming back to my point is, look at the AIDA formula: attention, interest, desire, and action. I would say focus on any one of those elements. Focus on the two A's first, different headlines and different offers or different calls to action at the end. But also look at the I and the D, different stories that gets them hooked in, what gets them interested in what you're saying, what you're selling, and what you want them to buy. And then also desire, maybe how you boost the value in their minds, talking about the benefits, sometimes listing different scenarios or ways to consume the product. Sometimes we can educate our audiences on how to consume the product. It helps to pre-sell the product as well, or the service. For example, when you talk about your book, you can talk about different things that your book will help solve, but at the same time say, well, when you come to chapter 4 on page 3, I talk about this. This is how you can use this in your life, or how this will help you in your business, or whatever the case is. So you help them to consume the product, but at the same time, it's sort of giving them an idea of what they get when they buy. And it also lowers that resistance factor, because people sometimes are resistant when they don't know what they're buying. So AIDA formula: attention, interest, desire, and action. Look at those elements. Sometimes interest is it's the story, maybe the first few paragraphs or the first few seconds of your video, or not seconds, maybe the first minute or two of your video, of your sales video. It could be whatever pulls them in and gets them interested. And sometimes you will use a story. It could be, I'm using this far off example. But let's say you talk about you've created your product and you've been in the same shoes as your audience. It could be about a situation that a good portion of your audience might understand. They might have gone through the same thing. Maybe you can change it to something else. That might be another element that they might understand even more. So you change that, rather than just changing simple words, simple headlines, colors, and backgrounds. All those things are fine. I would say don't test those things until you really know if your copy sells really well. And the only real way to test that is on the what, not the how. Focus on different messages entirely. Focus on different elements of that AIDA formula. And now we're going to come to the next slide and the final slide. I believe it's the final slide.
This has been wonderful. Thank you, Michel.
Oh, you're most welcome. Most welcome.
Like, you've given so much for, ideas of how to approach your copy, like, all the understanding your market and stuff. And copy is easy when you do it. But I also think what you're teaching is showing people how to get great ideas for information products. What market do you want to target? That oblivious, apathetic, thinking, or hurting, you're making it easy for people to come up with a great product that people are going to really want to get. So thank you, and continue on.
Well, thank you. Here's my final idea, or my final tip for you. How do you learn to write good copy, and especially good copy that converts? I can tell you this. There's an old joke that says how to get to Carnegie Hall, and the answer was practice, practice, practice. This is no different. But let me break that down into 3 different things, because there are ways that you can actually help to speed up the process. Now, I don't like to call them shortcuts, because to me shortcuts are like corner cuts. You're cutting corners. There's no better way to learn how to write good copy than to write it yourself. And that's why I'm saying practice, practice, practice. But let me break it down to 3. Learn copy, read copy, and then write copy. Here's what I mean. Learn copywriting. Absorb as much as you can about copywriting. And a lot of people say, well, there's some products on copywriting out there, but there's not a lot, or there's not a lot in my industry. I'll say this. What is copywriting really? Copywriting is writing a marketing message. What is a marketing message? It's getting people to be persuaded or to buy into a product, service, or an idea. Well, isn't that selling? Learn salesmanship. Learn how to sell. Learn even salesman tactics. Very often there are professional selling courses out there from great selling people or salespeople, like, for example, Zig Ziglar, Tom Hopkins, Brian Tracy, Dan Kennedy. Learn how to sell, because then when you translate that into actual words on a piece of paper, on your computer screen, or in a video, it's the same idea. It's copywriting. Copywriting is salesmanship in print. So basically learn copy, learn how to write copy, learn copywriting courses, learn marketing courses, learn salesmanship, selling courses. When I first started to learn about marketing or about copywriting, I learned more about copywriting through marketing. Like, for example, Jack Trout and Al Ries wrote a book called Positioning, The Battle for Your Mind, or the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, which probably have nothing to do with copy, but it helped my copywriting immensely, because it helped me understand marketing and understanding my market. Read copy. Very often the best way to learn copy is to read other people's copy, especially copy that you know converts really well. And there are various ways to do that. I mean, if you go online and you go to not only competing, and again, remember, competitors can be directly competing with you, but sometimes competitors can be indirectly, meaning other solutions for completely different products or services, but to help to solve the same problem. Look at their copy. Look how they tell their story. What kind of headlines are they using? What kind of offers are they making? What kind of ordering process are they getting their audiences to go through? What kind of story are they telling? What kind of stories are they selling? Remember, story selling. So read good copy. And then finally, write copy. So take the time to actually write copy. Sometimes it can be frustrating and we don't even have anything to write about. Well, sometimes just take a piece of copy that you have read that you know will sell well and write it again exactly as it's written out. Sometimes, I know a lot of people say, well, you should write it by hand. Gary Halbert used to say that. I don't mind if you type it. It helps you to understand the mindset behind what went into why people chose this idea. Why did they choose this concept? Why did they choose these bullets? Why did they choose this particular offer? Why were they negative here and positive there? And so on and so on and so forth. And sometimes when you write it yourself, you get to understand it. And don't be shy in writing your own copy. I mean, think of it this way, and this is something that I didn't say. This is something John Reese said a long time ago, and it stuck with me for a long, long time. When you write your first piece of copy, look at it this way. It is the worst it's ever going to be. It is the worst it's ever going to be. Because once you write it, then you'll add to it, you'll change it, you'll modify it, you'll add more, you'll write more, you'll switch things around, you'll test things, and you'll get the copy better and better. Then you are going to learn by writing copy yourself what will make your copy better. So, to finalize, learn copy, learn about copywriting, take copywriting courses. A lot of them are free. Some of them, like there are a lot of free books out there. I mentioned a book by Eugene Schwartz, Breakthrough Advertising. There are some very old books out there that have been around for a long, long time, but they're still very good, like Claude Hopkins, Advertising, and so on and so forth. Books like that. Then read copy. Read a lot of existing copy from other people. Copy that you know sells well, because you don't want to read copy that doesn't sell too well. Unless you can read it, and if you have a good understanding of copy, you can actually point out the errors in other people's copy. But then, you wouldn't be an author, you'd be an actual copywriter. But read copy, and that's a great way to learn copies, by reading other people's copy. And then finally, write. Practice, practice, practice. And you'll see you'll get better as time goes on. I hope that this has been informative for you. I hope that you've gotten some good information, some good tips. If there's any final thoughts or any questions, I would be glad to answer them.
Yeah, we do have, I've written down a few questions that people have got some good ones here for you, and we'll have to go through them quickly. We do have another session coming up at the top of the hour, but if you want to learn more about what Michael does, you can go to workaholicsforhire.com. You can see the spelling on the, well, we just lost it. There it is, and see what he does over there. So yeah, that was so great, and I kind of said the things I loved about it. It's really like the big picture thinking, and I think that's what's been a common theme with the Bestseller Summit, is that we can get bogged down in headlines and bullet points and all that, but what you said was like so great, because if you can do that part to understand your market, it all becomes easier. What to say is much easier. So
yeah, it doesn't matter what kind of gravy you put on your toast, what kind of whatever you put on your toast. What's important is the toast first, and then whatever you put on is gravy, really. So
right. So the first question is from Thomas, and he asked, do you want to be, you mentioned at the beginning, you mentioned about people mistaking that they're their own audience. So the question was, do you want to be more like your audience or unlike them as an expert?
It doesn't matter. Well, when you tell the story, when you write your copy, you can write your copy. If you have gone through what your audiences have gone through, you can write about yourself so that people feel a certain connection with you. But people can feel a connection with you if they know that at least you understand them. And sometimes it's not about what you went through. Sometimes people will actually tell the story of another client or somebody else that they've helped that have been in the same situation, so that when you do tell that story, you talk about the problems that they were going through and the solutions you provided and how their lives changed. It's like almost like a case study, so to speak, in the copy. you'll still get that same connection, and then they'll feel as well that you're the expert to solve their problem. Because here's the point. When you learn about your audience, it's not about whether you should be more like them or not. It's about whether your audience feels that you understand them. It's about empathy. It's about having a good understanding, or at least that your audience has a good understanding that you understand them. And you can be either a person has gone through what they have gone through, or you can tell a story about somebody that you know that has gone through what they've gone through, so that they can read the copy and say, aha, this guy knows exactly what I'm going through. This guy might have something that helps my problem.
Yeah. So what do you do, though? And I think this question came up quite a few from a few people. I saw Thomas and Omar ask, and there were probably others. How do you kind of start to learn about your market? So you're new, you don't totally know them. What do you do to get that in-depth knowledge?
Here's a fantastic tip. And if you didn't get much from this from the seminar, I want you to get this. Pick up the phone and record a conversation with your audience. People who will buy your product, either people who have already bought your product or people who have bought similar products in the past, and get them to sell you on the product. Poke them, prod them, use words that, or ask questions that will get them to talk, more open-ended questions, I mean. Let them sell you. Let them get excited and passionate about the solution, or let them talk about the problems they had before and when they were looking maybe for some other solutions that didn't really amount to much, and how they were getting disappointed, and then finally they stumbled onto this product or service, which is either yours or a similar one, and then they are so excited about all the good stuff that this product or service has done for them. Record that conversation, and of course get their permission, but record the conversation and have that conversation transcribed, and 9 times out of 10 they will sell you, they will write your copy for you. And I often use transcriptions of conversations I've had on the phone with clients, success stories, case studies that I've used in my copy, and I barely had to write a lot of copy after that because they did all the selling for me. And that's a great way to know more about your audience. Of course, there is very standard stuff that you can find out about your audience, like demographics, psychographics, meaning the majority of your audience, what age are they, what age they happen to be in, what kind of income level, what kind of work do they do, what kind of families do they have, and psychographics, meaning what kind of interests, groups that they belong to, what do they read, what gets, what excites them, whatever. But interviews are sometimes the best single source of information about your audience.
Great stuff, yes. And if you just spend time learning about your audience, and just over time too, you won't know as much at the beginning, but as you go, you learn more and you incorporate more of that in how you serve them, and it's a learning experience for sure. So last question is, Charles wanted to know if all, I think the same concepts, all the the O formula, the AIDA, does it also translate to video sales letters?
It absolutely does translate to video sales. Absolutely. And in fact, a lot of people say, well, when I put a sales message in writing, that writing could be a script for a video. Or we could use it for slides for a sales video. But it still comes back down to salesmanship, right? It's salesmanship in print. Well, it could be salesmanship in multimedia nowadays, but that very much applies to video. Probably, there's some elements in there that we want to test. The A at the beginning and the A at the end might be more, you want to pay more attention to that in video, because people's attention spans on video might be a little bit more fickle than, let's say, an article with headline, because now they're not just forced to stop and read actual headline and to find out if they want to read the copy. Now they have to sometimes passively watch a video, and the first few seconds of a video will determine if they're going to be interested in watching the whole video or not, or if they're just going to close their video or try to skip ahead, when people try to skip ahead a video. That's why the A and the A at the end of the AIDA formula might want to pay a little bit more attention to when it comes to multimedia, but it's still fundamentally all the same.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you so much. That was wonderful. And we're getting lots of great feedback in the questions area too.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Michael. That was awesome.
You're very welcome.
I found it.
I wish you guys good luck.
Like the part about testing. You know, I really need to do more of that, and just focusing on the big picture when you're doing your testing is important. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome. All right, guys. Have fun and good luck for the rest of the day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Take care.